I'm calling to order the February 10th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapters 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely, dial 1-408-650-3123 with access code 235-235-861. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/235-235-861. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body, are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along. Please note this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Is there anyone else also recording? Seeing none, could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one individual signed up for public comment, Mr. Tatro. Could you just please provide your name and your address?
Absolutely. Hi, good evening. My name is Robert Tatro, 4 Ridgewood Drive. Just to be clear, I am on the zoning board. I am not representing the zoning board in any way this evening. I did not ask their permission to be here, so therefore I'm just speaking as a citizen this evening. And I do have some concerns about some 40B, and what I'm actually here for is to discuss the possibility with this board of bringing the option of a building moratorium to the town meeting for May. So if I could present to you 3 reasons why, or at least 3 different thought process as to why this is worthwhile, and then I'll leave that up to you for a motion or decide whatever you want to do. So as you know, we've all been involved in this 40B process, and this is not a slight in any way, shape, or form to anyone in this room or anyone that's been in the process of doing this 40B over the last 20 years. Everybody has worked diligently trying to get this whole 40B through the process where it works for everyone. We know that. What I have a problem with is really some administrative issues, and we'll start with that first. So, as you know, if you apply for a permit in town, you have to come before a board, yours, mine, whichever one it might be, and you have to apply with a certain bylaw in mind, 5.3.1, 9.2.12, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, none of those exist when you're dealing with the 40B process, okay? So, I'll give you an example. This is the Chapter 40B Handbook for Zoning Board of Appeals dated March of 2017. And if you know the legalese like we all do, when they call things handbook specifically, and there's no CMR notifications underneath it, this is really kind of a non-binding thing. And if you have read through all of this, like I have, quite frankly, this thing reads more like they're trying to sell me a timeshare in Boca, some near a swamp, than it actually does as a reference to a 40B situation. So what it talks about, first of all, is how it empowers the zoning board to make this process go as quickly as possible. But in reality, it strips the other boards in the community from doing what they are supposed to do, which is to make sure their areas of expertise are covered so all these projects are done fairly and equitably through our community. So if you look at the MBTA communities law, it was just contested in court by 12 different communities, which they won, by the way. The Supreme Court did, however, rule that, if I'm saying this correctly, the law is, in fact, solid, and it is according to the Constitution, so it is constitutional, but they are required to go out and redo all the regulations, make them all in a CMR format, and then present them. So the MBTA communities law is technically on hold right now until they do that. Coincidentally, what's really interesting, since 1966 or 67 when this came out, it's 55, 57 years now, they somehow haven't had the time to write all this stuff down and put it in format. So maybe it's time for us to give them a break and let them have time to go ahead and write all this down. So it seems to me the Supreme Court would probably agree that since none of this is in actually CMR format, that's one reason that we should be able to at least have that. They, in fact, give us a list of waivers that's listed very specifically to each and every one of our department's requirements, 9.3, 2.5, whatever it might be, but they can't provide us with any of those answers in return to that equal standard. I've asked for several times if I could have some documentation that would support their positions, and they can't provide me with any of that. So I'll give you an example. One of the positions that I've been in the past was investigations, and also I worked in a biotechnology area where there would be a lot of FDA oversight. So it's not enough to just be able to say that I stand on this particular handbook. I have to be able to back it up with the logic and knowledge behind me. And asking for that logic and knowledge behind them, they can't provide it. So I'll give you an example. They are claiming that we need 222,000 new units between now and 2027, but the federal census that comes out says that we are actually in a birth rate decline in Massachusetts substantially, and we are also either number one or number two in educated middle-class families moving out of the state. So the numbers just don't add up. The math ain't mathing, okay? So those are reasons to question it on number one. The other part would be, since I did ask for all of this background information to support where they believe that they should need all these things, they weren't able to provide it to me, so I went and researched it on my own. And what you have here is, for people that like to go online and research things, one of the key things that you have to do is you have to look for people that are willing to put their name and information on the research information, where it was funded from, and who ordered it. So this is called exclusionary by design, an investigation into zoning use as a tool of race, class, and family exclusion in Boston suburbs, 1920 till today. And it speaks by this woman, Amy Dane, Dane Research, commissioned in November of 2023, mind you, not the 2017 that handbook is talking about. And it was by the Racial Wealth Equity Resource Center from Boston Indicators and Boston Indicators itself. And it's very interesting is on page 24, 25, and 26, they have case studies of the towns of Newton, Concord, and Weston of how they were able to avoid having any 40B projects built in their community by selective zoning. So I'm not sure if you're all aware of this, and what's very interesting about 40B is if you live in a community that has enough higher tax rate that you don't require any additional state aid to make your budget, then you don't have to submit a housing plan. And if you don't have to submit a housing plan, you don't have to be subjected to 40B housing. So that's pretty interesting. So if you live in one of the top 10 communities in the state that pay enough real estate taxes that they don't require any state aid and therefore don't have to put a housing plan in, you're automatically exempt from 40B. So that's not equal enforcement under the law, in my mind. And again, I want to point out that I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, don't claim to be one. But the beauty of the Constitution is, when it was written by the forefathers, it was intended to be interpreted by people of average intelligence like me. So what I'd like to point out is that nobody has also discussed, when you look at the 40B law itself, and you look at the related cases to it, nobody seems to refer back to, at least that I can tell, to our state constitution. And I want to point out a couple of things, like Article 6. No man nor corporation or association of men have any other title to obtain advantages or particular and exclusive privileges distinct from those of the community. That what arises from the consideration of services rendered to the public. What that means is you can't get any special deals when you come to towns. What we can deal with is what you can deal with. That right there illustrates a serious, to me, violation of what 40B does. Article 7, the government is instituted for the common good, for the protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness of the people, and not for the profit, honor, or private interest of any one man, family, class of men. And therefore, the people alone have an incontestable, unalienable, and indefeasible right to institute government and to reform, alter, or totally change the same. The person that is going around through Upton, Grafton, Millbury, and Auburn is one person, one family, one descendant who is benefiting from a particular set of laws that make that person exclusively the ability to do exactly what Article 6 is not supposed to allow them to do. Article 7 says, for a matter of fact, that if they let them do Article 6, Article 7 is the remedy on the government level, and Article 9, 6, 7, 8, excuse me, in order to prevent those who are vested with authority from becoming oppressors, the people have a right at such periods and in such a manner as that they shall establish by their frame of government to cause the public officers to return to private life. So in other words, if they're willing to violate 6, you can straighten them out with 7, or we can invoke 8. And that's how I read all this. And again, if I'm wrong, I would like an attorney to tell me I'm wrong. I don't want another armchair quarterback, because that's technically what I really am, and I recognize that. But as a citizen who is aware of what, at least a basic understanding of the legal process, I think we can all agree in this room, regardless of how we feel about 40B, the process is wrong. It's just simple as that. So what I'm asking for is for the board's consideration to consider the information that I've given you this evening. I have a couple of copies that I'll leave here. And be willing to present this information to the town attorney so a brief can be prepared for the purpose of presenting the town meeting for a building moratorium in all of the areas, preventing additional building of multifamily units, but to allow buildings such as Route 20 or Route 12 or the highway business areas to be, continue to function. Until such time that the state can demonstrate to us that they are acting in good faith with the Massachusetts Constitution, by the way, written by Sam Adams. It's 4 years older than the U.S. Constitution. He also is one of the only people that authored both the Massachusetts Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. I think that was just pretty interesting in my research. I found that. So not only was a really good brewer, he was also a pretty smart guy. So that's my presentation on why I believe 40B should be questioned. I believe this information should be brought to the attorney for a brief to be connected to a moratorium. And I really say, I think it's very important to understand, and I want to repeat this again. Mr. Carpenter, for example, I'm sorry, I can't really read your, Ms. Kavanaugh. I mean, everybody, we've created subcommittees and study committees. The director of DDIS has been literally, I'm telling you, hours upon hours trying to sort through this 40B problem. This is not unique to the town of Auburn. Upton, Grafton, Millbury, and I know you're not allowed to technically, but since I'm a civilian, I did. And I've called every town hall in that particular district, and none of them are happy with this process. And that, again, going back to the Constitution, it clearly states in Article 10 that they will occasionally get together. I think it's Article 10. I forget exactly which one. I apologize. Don't quote me on that. But they will get together and rewrite laws vigorously as needed, and they don't do that either. So I think we have a lot of legal standards. What I'm asking you to forward this to the attorney, at least for a consideration. If that attorney comes back and says, I'm completely off the wall and it's not going to work, then I respect the opinion of the attorney. But at the very least, if we go through this process and the town meeting doesn't agree with it, or the attorney general doesn't agree with it, we now have a consensus. We know where the board stands, we know where the town meeting stands, and we know where we stand. And we can move forward as a community and stop these arguings and these bickerings that we have in between us, and we can have a better understanding of what we really need to have here. So that's what my request is this evening, and I apologize for taking a little bit longer, but I wanted to kind of squeeze it all in at once on you. So I will leave you with this. This is not an affront to you. I'm speaking directly to our local politicians specifically, but if they would spend a little more time thinking about Sam Adams, George Washington, and maybe Thomas Jefferson, and a little less time thinking about Colonel Sanders, Aunt Jemima, and the image of Uncle Ben in public, maybe we would have, a little less issues that we're dealing with like we are now. So I appreciate your time and thank you for the consideration. And there's the paperwork. I'm going to leave that right there.
Thank you so much. Can we have town council review this document? We, does it have to go on the next, okay. We would have to put it on our next agenda, to be able to take a vote for town council's review. So we're on number 4, community organizations. We have none. We do have presentations and public hearings. There is a continuation of the public hearing by National Grid. However, we were notified today that, by email, that National Grid is withdrawing their application. They are going to put it on an existing pole. And we will get you, I know we have an abutter here, and we'll get you some more information on what pole that's going to be. So their second is a common victrola license for,
We need to, did we close that previous one or we continued
We
it?
should probably close it, right?
We
we
continued.
continued it, okay. So is there a motion to reopen?
Motion to reopen the hearing.
Is there a second?
Second, to the chair, it looks like someone's trying to.
Yep. Certainly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair is a yes as well.
Hi, Rocky Cataldo, Church Street, Arrowhead Ave. About this poll issue, that was what I was going to ask them to think about, instead of adding another pole in Virgin area, is to put it onto an existing pole, because their plan was to put it 44 feet from another pole that's already existing, which makes no sense. So I'd like to know what pole they're planning to move this capacitor on, what area it's in, and if it's includes my property.
Certainly. We will reach back out to National Grid and get that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Do board members have any questions?
I make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Our second hearing is a common victrola license from Otaka Sakai. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
A motion to open the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Is there someone here? I don't know. If you are on the call, if you've joined by the call, could you just unmute yourself? Or,
I think you can unmute them, can't you?
you?
Muted himself. that's
Yeah.
all.
Oh,
There he goes.
Mr. Lee, are
Hi,
you, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hi, is this Mr. Lee?
Yes,
Can
it
you-
is.
All right, could you tell us a little bit about the request?
So I'm currently a hobby shop store in the mall. Like we sell Pokemon cards and Magic cards and stuff like that. We do have a space for the players that collect these card games to play in store. And we do play overnight in the mall. So the food court is normally closed at that time. And a lot of players do end up like staying in our store late. So our request is to open a small cafe space where we would just be serving like cup ramen noodles and coffees and teas for the players overnight.
Is there anybody from the public that has questions? Do board members have any questions?
So my application shows that beverages, coffee, tea, and soda were stricken from this request.
Oh, I think that just pulls.
Just the way the line is set up.
Yeah,
Well, that's why I'm asking. Just want to make sure. And then this is more of a question on that form. So the representative, we don't ask for a title, and I'm just wondering, is this person the owner who's representing them, or are they?
Yes.
Okay. Those were my questions. I apologize.
are there any other questions? Certainly.
Just a quick question, Mr. Lee. You're saying overnight, but the application has hours of operation from 12 PM to 6 PM on Sunday, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 8, and Friday and Saturday, 10 to 9. So I'm somewhat confused.
So our hours of operation like has to follow the mall. Like we have to keep our gate open. So after those hours, our gate isn't open to the public anymore. So I only put down like when our gate is open for the public. And the cafe, ideally, it would be open all day because we do host events as well, like during the day. So that's why like the hour operation is for like our whole store in general.
So you're not having people spending after 9 PM, 8 PM, or 6 PM. Am I understanding that correctly?
We don't know. It depends on like how long the games last. Like they start before those closing times, but they could end up being here until like 10 or 11 at night.
All right.
Board members have any other questions? Did you have a comment?
I do. I actually have a question through the chair. So to clarify on Selectman Carpenter's question, the application says overnight, but you're saying 11 PM. And then the other thing that you stated was after the mall closes and the gates come down, that the players are still in there. So I would ask the board to hold off on this request. There's a couple of concerning things that were said tonight that I would like our fire prevention office to review. There cannot be people in any store with gate closures. And I do have further questions about the operation, the hours of operation. What does overnight actually mean? So I would ask the board to hold off on this in 2 weeks until the fire prevention office has an opportunity to review in full.
I'd make that in the form of a motion.
Can I just add on to that? Can we also get clarification? Because the representative did say overnight. However, the application does not list the overnight hours past 9 PM. So if the intent is to have service till 11 PM or midnight or whatever their intent is, that should be spelled out on the application that we're approving.
So I do apologize for the confusion. A lot of our events don't last that long. It is just like I'm telling you, like it could end up that long. We normally already let people out the door when we close. Like we try to finish up the games as fast as possible before the hours of operation closes. But sometimes we have stragglers or they're just finishing up their games. Like we can't just stop it until they finish the tournament.
Now, I would just say for the board's edification, if we issue a liquor license, there are restrictions as to whether a establishment when they can serve liquor to. I'm not going to give a blanket, hey, when the game is over. This is I'm glad the chief was here because I'm concerned if there were a medical emergency or, God forbid, there be some other kind of public disturbance, how public safety would get into a locked building. So maybe they have secret ways of doing that, and I'm not asking for that on, public record, but, we do have to be concerned about businesses. I've never been comfortable with a 24-hour business in town. I know we have several in town, but, I don't think it's a good practice to be having businesses open in locked spaces. And again, if somebody were bringing in, say, a bring your own alcohol license for this establishment, we would have, concerns that just like if you were selling alcohol, you can't serve past a certain period of time. So we can't, just have people in spaces that are not accessible. So anyways, I'll renew my motion to continue this, and Mr. Lee can work it out with town staff, and we can come back at the next meeting, hopefully. So I'll make a motion, we continue this application to the next meeting on the
Second.
24th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. So we will continue your application at the next meeting or after we have recommendations from the Fire Prevention Office.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a third public hearing for a common victrola license for Auto Brew Cafe. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. I do believe she was also joining. Okay. Is there, oh, you're here. Okay, wonderful. Okay. Could you just step up, tell us your name and a little bit about the,
My name is Deb Miller, and I'm looking to open a cafe inside of Lundgren Honda on 20.
thank you. Is there any questions from the public?
Public.
From board members?
So would your hours follow the hours of Lundgren Motors when they're
They
open?
would be actually shorter than Lundgren and not open on Sunday.
Okay.
So they open at 7 o'clock. I'm planning on getting in there by 6:30 for the employees and closing at 2, Monday through Friday. Saturday, we're thinking 7 to 12:30.
Okay, thank you.
Do board members have questions?
Just one more. So is this going to be restricted to people who might be coming in looking for a car, or are we talking about members of the public potentially coming in and taking up parking
So
space?
we are right outside of service, so yes, we would be also servicing the people coming in to service their vehicles. And I believe there's 150 employees within Lundgren Honda. We're not actually promoting outside right now, but yes, everybody would be welcome.
So I would ask the planner to make sure that we have adequate parking for this, because if we are having members of the public, Lundgren is available, has parking for their use. Now we're adding a second use, so
Right.
it may be perfectly fine, but I would just like, some certainty on that.
Just to clarify, I think what you're saying is that the outside public that you're talking about are people that are coming to get their cars serviced by Lundgren, not just buying.
Correct.
So they're customers that are coming to Lundgren already.
Right, and there is a ample parking right outside of service.
So this would be restricted to just people either buying a car or getting service at Lundgren. We're not talking about trying to attract
Exactly, but,
members of the general public.
right, not the general public, but obviously if people were to come in, we would service them.
Will the sandwiches, soup, salad, and all that, will that be made on site?
Yes,
And I'm assuming you've gone through design and all that, so the
Yes.
other boards have seen the layout and are approved. Have you gone through all the other boards? and
Yes.
They've approved it?
yes.
Are there any other questions?
I make a motion that we close the hearing, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Is there a motion on the application?
I make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license.
Second it for discussion. I would just ask that we restrict the license to only those customers of Lundgren Honda, that we restrict this unless we have something from zoning that says we have adequate parking for this in addition to the business they're already doing. So that's the only request that I would make.
I have a question. How would I go about that? If I wanted to service the outside public, I don't want that to be a problem in the future. So is there something I need to do now to prevent anything in the future from restricting me from
Talk to
that?
the planner, just figure that piece out. You may be perfectly fine, I have no idea. I just want to protect us because, again, if this was any other business, we need to make sure that you're in compliance with zoning before we issue a license. So there may be ample parking, there may not be. I don't.
So you know that the cafe went in 2012 and the original building was built. There has been a cafe there for that many years. They did close, I believe, in 2021 because of COVID. So it was just a small amount of time that they were closed before pre-open.
So I'm prepared to support it tonight, given the fact that there was a cafe there before. I know the property, there is a large amount of parking there, and I don't think there's any way feasibly or operationally for someone to say, are you here serving or are you just here to get a donut? So I mean, I think it's ready to go forward tonight, and I'm ready to support it.
If that's the case, is there a motion?
There is a,
There is a motion and second.
I'll withdraw my second if Mr. Kareem.
I will second.
Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
The chair is a yes as well. You have your license.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving along to departmental items. Is there someone here for the Mass Save?
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So this is a grant opportunity that we came across to apply for. It's through Mass Save for funding for the salary and benefits for a full-time energy manager. I believe a letter of support that was part of the grant application was included in your packet that details some of the goals and the objectives that this full-time staff member would be working on. But it would allow for an expansion of the role with someone focused full-time on energy management and myself focused full-time on economic development.
So
Do board members have questions?
I just have a couple questions. So the grant will cover the salary for 3 years, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. The salary and the benefits for 3 years.
That's the question I had, so go ahead.
If I can add on to that. So is this going to be termed or tied to this, or are we going to hire the position and then after 3 years, there's no more funding for it and it's coming from the taxpayers directly?
Well, that's yet to be seen, but we would hope we would be able to keep this person on to ensure the sustainability for the town. There's quite a bit of work for the person to do. Right now, it's being done on a part-time basis, which takes away from our economic development. So it's a great opportunity to get a head start with 3 years of funding.
Through the chair. Also, we would hope that with increased focus on our energy management, that would result in savings to town utilities and them applying for rebates in different programs and other energy grants. And so that would reflect some savings.
And if I may, the goal is to hire someone who's not currently on staff, or?
That is correct.
Are there any other questions?
I
Yes.
have one.
Okay.
And go ahead.
So we're applying for this. How likely is that we'll get the grant?
I can't say for sure. Mass Save is funding up to 16 full-time energy managers or their part-time equivalents. I am not sure how many other municipalities have applied, but it was open to municipalities only.
Okay, and if we get this grant and fill this position, does that make us eligible for even more grants because we've ticked off the box? You know, we're really addressing energy?
I believe through the efforts of a full-time energy manager that it would.
So when we created the energy program, we had money to pay for a part-time energy manager. So my question is, what are we doing with that money that's built into that program? Because that's really an important part of, and should have been kind of, we should have been given that information as part of this discussion.
It's the first time I've heard of that it was funded, like there was money specifically for the energy manager, which is Brooke part-time. The goal is to increase a priority of the board, which is economic development. And we were hoping to get her back full-time to be doing economic development. We found this as a great opportunity to do so. I can look into when it was approved and how it was approved for funding, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, because I think if we're funding this, then we should, I think it was like 1 cent or something. I forget what Julie told me at the time, but it was not transparent when the program was created. It was not even transparent to this board member when we voted for it, but it became apparent after we voted to input it. So if it's something that we can do to continue to save money from the program, that's fine. I'm not opposed to the grant. I will say that I will only support it for 3 years. I'm not necessarily, I think we need to look at regionalization for this position potentially, see what other opportunities are out there. But for right now, what's before me is, this sounds like an excellent opportunity to do something more for the schools and for, the town. So I'm definitely in favor of that, but with that caveat, which I may not even be here in 3 years, so it doesn't really matter, but I'm just letting you know at the outset.
That goes to another question. So currently the position is part-time, and the economic development job, is that funded full-time and the energy is part-time? Like, I'm just trying to figure out how the salary is currently divvied up, and like, are we not allocating any money for the energy manager? I think when I came to town, the energy manager was on the planning department, and that was part-time back then. So I just want to, I think Mr. Carpenter said, I love the idea of looking at this and spending the money. I just don't want to commit to anything beyond that. And the reason is I think we need to look at all administrative positions and make sure we're getting the value. I think you'll see this one. I think it's an easy win, and we should definitely be targeting the energy savings. But at the same time, I feel like there's half a salary that's going somewhere that we don't currently know where that's going.
So in the budget, there's a person that's doing economic development / energy management. So it's one line item with $1 amount. So that is the line item and dollar amount that I was going to use for the economic development coordinator, 100%, that person. So there's no money that's not going somewhere that we don't know. That was my plan. Just finding out tonight that there was money put aside specifically for energy, I'll look into that and I'll get back to the board on that. But right now, that was my objective, was to use the funds that was earmarked for her at 100% to do economic development.
Through the chair. Mr. Carpenter, are the funds that you're referring to, the energy funds, the municipal adder through the Community Choice Power Program?
It was so long ago, I don't remember. But I remember after we voted it, Julie specifically said to me that there was 1%, 1 cent or some way of funding this energy position or offsetting the cost. So whether that offsets the full cost, I have absolutely no idea. But obviously, the energy program shouldn't be subsidizing something that isn't directly related to the energy program. And if we now have a full-time employee that's paid for with other money, if we can save energy participants 1 cent or whatever it turns out to be, I'd rather see that go back for the next 3 years to the people who've signed up so that they can save additional money, because I think we have saved substantial money by having an aggregation program.
So,
Good evening. So for Brooke's position, the salary is paid through a tax levy portion and also muni aggregation. So the adder that Brooke is talking about is part of that. So there is an offset, similar to what you're talking about, Mr. Carpenter. So the Muni Ag is something that's constantly replenished with that adder coming in, and I think that this grant opportunity is a good chance for Brooke to focus solely on economic development if we were to be so lucky to get somebody that can just focus on the energy management. And as she identified, we have several, we're a green community, so we're constantly looking for projects to lower the energy cost for the buildings, the town buildings. And so that savings is going to help deflect some of the benefits and salary that would come in 3 years. But I think you're going to notice if we are able to get somebody to be able to focus just on energy and just on economic development, I think it's a win-win for the town.
I don't have a problem doing it. I just don't think that the energy program should be paying for an economic development officer when that wasn't why the fee was established. So that's my concern. If we can save the resident and the businesses that are signed up for this aggregation, we were using it as a means to administer the program. Now we may have, through good fortune, somebody doing it full time. That fee shouldn't be collected or subsidizing another non-energy function is my point. So absolutely in favor of trying to see if we can get it for 3 years. I think that's great. I think it's great if we can find money so that Brooke, can work on economic development full time. I'm sure there's more than enough to be done there. I just don't think the energy program should be subsidizing that position.
Right, but I guess for her currently, she is
Right, until
doing that.
the grant is issued, she's obviously entitled to that. I'm talking if we get it, which is a big if by the sounds of it, but let's throw our hat into the ring.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might, so this is exactly what I hope we're going to start doing and thinking out of the box. So both the energy manager position and the economic development needs full-time attention on both ends. And I'm glad to see this forward. My concern is, that if we are fortunate enough to get this, it is a competitive grant, that we start thinking now what happens in 3 years. Because, I think that having an energy manager who's going to be focusing on not just, implementing the plans, but also looking for other grant opportunities and looking for other ways to bring the cost of our energy in the public buildings and the public realm down is important. At the same time, obviously, economic development, looking at implementing some of the great plans that we've done in our planning department to actually bring in new businesses and new model types, in their tax revenue that comes with it, which then lowers down the residential tax and other business taxes, but also spurs economic development and new jobs, is important. And really, it doesn't get enough focus with a part-time person. As great as Brooke is, it's more than a part-time job in each realm. I'm pretty sure that the money that comes in from the Muni aggregate is going to so many different programs within the town, not just funding Brooks, 50% of Brooks' salaries and benefits, that I'm sure there is money that can be moved around to ensure that there is a way to make sure that we can fund a full-time economic development person. I'm not too worried about that. But I do just want to make sure that if we do get this grant, that we are thinking now and not kicking the can down the road for 3 years and then saying, uh-oh, what do we do? Now we have to fund this person.
I think I've mentioned in the past as well with the HVAC upgrades and any energy savings that we are getting, that should we agree to move forward and get this, we should be tracking that. And I'd like to see a report on the cost savings that it's doing, because that could potentially in 3 years show us that it's beneficial to have this position continue. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think that goes a long way to tell the story. I'm all for the energy efficiency. I know we've got a lot of old buildings and things. We are in the process of upgrading, so we should be looking at that and actually checking off the cost reduction in that and knowing what offsets we're achieving. And, again, it's as simple as tracking all the grants that we're getting, this position's yielding, as well as reduction in savings. And I don't know what the systems actually look like. And I don't know, another question I wanted to ask is, where does this position reside and like how are they managed? Because I know they'll be doing a lot of work in the schools. I know we have facilities departments. I know we have engineering. So has that been discussed?
That is yet to be decided. There's been a lot of discussion around it, though, because it'll be a person that goes to multiple buildings. But we do have a couple ideas. We'll definitely figure that out.
Board members have any other questions?
My only other thought is if we can repurpose that money for the ag fund to help seniors or veterans with some things, then I'm all in favor of looking at what we can do with that money, should we be fortunate to get this grant. So, but if we're told no, then I think that needs to go back to the users for the period of time that this individual is in the position.
Thank you for your comments. Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we vote to apply for, accept, and expend grant funds from Mass Save Municipal Energy Manager Grant for hiring a full-time energy manager, with thanks to Brooke and our former manager, Mr. Kazanovich, for coming up with this.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a report from the CFO on the gift account balances.
Good evening.
Hi, Karen.
So I've put together a list of the gift accounts that we have and what the balance was when I put it together on January 30th. The department that's responsible, and then I just put in the other column that the types are gifts and donations. I've gone through some of the inactive accounts that we have on the books for gifts and donations, some of the special revenue. And some of those have been closed, but if I wasn't really sure if it was still something that the department was interested in using, so we still have some on here. Some of these are active, some of these are a little bit older. And I'd gladly answer any questions about it, but I think what I also would like to do is to take this list, get it out to the departments, and make sure that everything on here is our active accounts, that there are, that they should stay open, and that they have intentions of using them within a period of time, if we don't replenish the account with other gifts. So I'd be happy to go through anything on here. There's some I'm familiar with, some that might not be as familiar with, but we can look into.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you. That's a good idea. It's good practice to close some of these that are not being used if it's just sitting there. My only question was the Outlook Media donation account right underneath Pappas. What is that account?
I did ask former town manager Kazanovich about that, and I'm going to have to look back at that a little bit, and I can send you some information on that.
Okay, good, thank you.
That's tied to the billboard.
It could be, I was just going to say that could be the electronic billboards.
They paid us a certain amount ahead of time, so the $250 was what they were giving us total, if I recall correctly. So that would be the mall, what the sign company agreed to give us.
Okay, thank you.
And I do think there's some additional monies coming in some of the future years. And I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on that to see what those funds were earmarked for, or what they're earmarked for.
Do board members have any other questions?
Just a quick question. You mentioned inactive accounts. Do you, off the top of your head, can you call out any of them for us? I think it's a great idea to go to the individual departments and figure out, and if there's a way to combine some of these so that they can actually use them, that would be great, but.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like, for example, I'd like to send this to the fire department and have them go through, like, the fire department dive team gifts. I'm not sure how old. Some of those are older amounts that have been around for a while. And again, I didn't want to close anything out in case there's any intentions to use anything. I mean, I did close some, but I'd like to go through and just have discussions with the department heads and see in what direction they're going with that, if the program's still active.
Yeah, well, like Fred Berry Marker from Kiwanis, it would be very interesting to find out, you know, that's in DPW, we're talking about $800.
Right, or like.
No idea what it is, but it would be interesting to find out, or why we're holding on to $92.50, or, you know, $148 or whatever. But yeah, no, that's fine.
Right, and for example, like the Pappas swim pool study has 1,600. I'm not sure how long ago there might have been something done in regards to that.
Well, you may have to go back to the foundation for that, because that was, if I recall correctly, funded by the Pappas Foundation. So that may be money we owe back to them that they may be able to use for other purposes.
Correct, so I'm just going to kind of go down this and, like I said, send it to the department heads to go through.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair? When you close it out, what happens to the funds that are in the account?
They get closed out to the general fund.
To the
and then
general
they
fund,
get certified as part of the free cash.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Yep, so if I may, so if that happens, again, depending on where these funds, if they're tied to specific things, you can't actually close out the account unless it's spent in that proper manner, correct?
Well, I think if say like if we got a $10,000 for the Pappas swim pool study and there's some money left there, I'd say either we could contact them to see if they'd want the funds sent back, or we can say, okay, well, the purpose of that donation has been satisfied. So I just want to be careful. That's why I didn't,
Correct.
I didn't
Yep.
kind
No.
of close out, even if there was $27, sometimes the department says, okay, well, give me a few months and I'll spend that on the intended purpose.
And that's I just want to make sure that these gifts are going to the intended purpose or going in that right manner.
Correct.
So I know I asked in the past about like the SIP funds and projects that haven't been completely closed out, that there's still money in. And this report, and I'm not telling you, you probably have tons of work, but I'd like to see a report like that so we can reallocate or allocate funds. I think a couple of years ago, the school department was looking for windows from a project, like, so that it was funded, they were reallocating money. But I'd like to see a report like that for those things so we can get in touch with the department heads and appropriate things and make sure that we're addressing things that have already been funded rather than coming back and asking for additional projects or new project funds if they tie properly.
So Steve, you're talking about the articles, right, from town meetings?
Correct.
Yeah. I think usually department heads are really pretty good at knowing that there might be some money left, and they're pretty good at repurposing it, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, no, so a quick report like this, and again, we might see that there's $7 for something. We might see that there's $50,000. I don't know. I'm just saying there's projects, and again, when we reallocate, and it's eye-opening to me that a project was approved 8 years ago, there's still money there. And obviously every project has their own life cycle, but just being aware of that and utilizing the funds appropriately is something I'd like to see instead of sitting here doing, I'm assuming nothing. These aren't interest-bearing accounts, correct, or are they?
They are not.
Correct, so.
And I agree, and that's what I've started doing in this past fiscal year, and I'll keep working on it to get it down to what we just need to keep open in the projects, or like you said, if we can reallocate, that's why we come back to town meeting and ask to repurpose some of the funds.
I appreciate that. And again, I'm not directing you to do that. I don't know what the board's intention is, but I know I've asked in the past, and this report is something that just sparks my mind that like this is very easy to read, see where it is, and have those discussions so we can allocate appropriately. So thank you.
Thank you. Do board members have any additional questions?
No, I would just make that in the form of a request through the town manager. We can certainly direct the town manager to give us reports. So,
No, if the rest of the board's in agreement.
I'm just saying, in general, as a general request to the manager, so that if there is sensitivity around the board making what I think of as a simple ask, then let's vote on it. But to me, we have certainly had reports given to us and things followed up with a member just asking for it. So I don't necessarily, I'm happy to do it either way.
Can we add that to the next agenda because we don't have a vote listed?
No, and that's absolutely fine, Madam Chair. I'm just saying, we don't necessarily have to vote at all. If the manager is okay with this as a general discussion and seeing that it's carried out, we're fine.
Could that be something that you would take care of?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion that we move up Town Manager item 9A, please?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. So I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, so this is a transfer. The school committee and the school superintendent request for a board vote to approve a sped stabilization transfer of $87,000.
Madam Chair, the superintendent is here. Can we ask her to join us at the table? She's been sitting here listening patiently.
Either one.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
So this request before you came to you several months ago as well. This is in response to a student who moved into Auburn in late August, who was in a residential placement based on their special needs. Because we had not had time to plan for that, we've asked for access to the Special Education Stabilization Fund to fund that placement.
Good. What is the balance of that fund right now?
It was on what I sent you. I think it was about $525,000.
Okay.
Yes. And in speaking with Mr. Kazanovich, when this all first happened, he advised that we do this in a few chunks versus one big lump sum. Things change with kids, you never know. But seemingly now the placement has gone well the last few months, so it seems like it's going to be that way for this year anyway.
And just so that people understand, we can apply for some refunds of that, for some payback of that from the state, correct?
Correct, through Circuit Breaker.
Circuit breaker, yep.
Yes. And that's typically 75%.
Okay.
Over a certain amount. I think anything over $50,000, you can then apply for, you can get reimbursed for 75%.
Will this be added to the SPED account going forward?
We hope. Yes. Yes.
Student is intending to remain in our schools, yes?
Intending to remain a resident of Auburn. We are hoping that in the coming school year, the student may step down to a day placement, which would be significantly less expensive. But that still has to be determined by the special education team and the school where they're at now.
It would be funded through the SPED budget?
Correct.
I'm sure I'd make a motion that we authorize the transfer of $87,000 from the SPED Stabilization Transfer Fund.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Thank you so
all very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are moving back to 6C. This is a vote to accept the fiscal year 25 state firefighter safety equipment grant. In our package, there's a letter. Chief Coleman, did you want to come up?
It's not easy, but I'll-
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the letter indicates, we were fortunate to receive this firefighter safety and equipment grant. This will allow the department to purchase 4 new sets of turnout gear this year.
Board members have any questions?
Does turnout gear is for new firefighters, or it's just a
It's
regular
a
replacement?
supplement to the operational budget. We're allocated on an annual basis to replace a certain amount, so this will be a supplemental for this year's budget.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we vote to accept the fiscal year 25 state firefighter safety equipment grant.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Also in our packets, there is a regional dispatch study.
Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to first let you know, the town was provided with this unique opportunity to participate in a feasibility study that looked at the possibility of regionalizing our 911 dispatch services with Spencer, Charlton, Southbridge, and Sturbridge. When the discussion first came up, we had gotten the chiefs together. I know it's been a topic of discussion the last several years as well, to find out if it's something that we should look into, just for future planning. So this is just an informational piece for you. It is so that we can all acclimate ourselves to even the idea. The report will actually come out in April. We'll have a full year to consider. If the town decides to do anything with that, we don't have to, there's no commitment, but it didn't cost us anything to do this. It was part of a grant. So when we did speak to the chiefs, it was decided it was in the best interest to at least look at it so that we knew the pros and cons. But I think Chief Coleman can provide some additional information.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Manager. Through the chair to the board, I have with me this evening our 911 Communications Director, Mary Ann O'Connor. So she has been instrumental in providing the outside firm with the data that they have requested. There was a lot of it. I know Chief Lemon and I hoped to help her with it, and when we opened up the spreadsheet and looked at the pages and pages and pages, there was literally not one thing we could help her with. So she did. It was a monumental task to provide them. It was a huge lift, but she was able to complete it, and we thank her for that. As the manager said, regional dispatch is something that we have talked about conceptually for many, many years. And when we talk about the idea, it's scary to some. There are a lot of questions, and there's certainly a lot for the town to digest over the next year, especially after the report comes out. But anytime the police chief and I were asked about regional dispatch, really all the answers that we could provide were speculative in nature. It was things that we knew from our counterparts that operated within regional systems. It's just information that we sort of heard along the way. So as the manager said, this was a great opportunity to get in at the ground level in a study and not only understand the feasibility of it, but to have some costs associated with it and some other things that the board is ultimately really going to need in order to make an educated decision. So you were provided with a copy of the executive summary that came out. As the manager stated, the final report is due out in April. That will have a little more information. And then in conversation as early as today with some of my counterparts, we expect the timeline for communities to ultimately make a decision would have to be by March of next year in order for us to be able to apply for a state 911 grant to fund the regional center. And as we talked about once before, the state is putting a lot of money into regional centers. It's not unrealistic to think that they would not fund either a new build or a renovation of an existing facility and fund the operation for several years with some sort of a wean-off period. But like I said, there's a lot of information, a lot of dialogue that's going to need to occur. But as the manager said, we felt that it was important to jump in at the ground level and at least bring the board in very early into this conversation because it's a lot to think about. So we're certainly able to entertain any questions you may have, but it is very early in the process.
Do board members have any questions?
Chief, I think you stated in the past that your preference would be if something like this were to move forward, you'd want it to reside in Auburn. I'm assuming the other towns are thinking very similar to that. Has there been discussion about if that's not in a certain town, they're gonna pull out and then the costs change dramatically because people aren't signing up?
Yeah, I think I think everybody, there's several ways, not to dive too deep into it, but there's several ways that regional centers can be organized and operated. And I think, sort of our thinking was, in order to sort of maintain some level of control to make sure that we're getting the product that we want, our thinking was we would want to host it. But the level, the way that, and it's kind of reported in the executive summary, there's a couple different models. I think all of the towns are on the same page, and I'm very comfortable with this group, the town administrators and managers, right down to the police chiefs and fire chiefs. It's very rare that you can get 5 communities in a room and we're all kind of thinking the same thing. And I think we're all on the same page here, is that the way that this is going to be a success is if there's not one community that's the ultimate authority, right? Everybody at the table, from the executive level with you down to the operational folks, everybody has to have a voice and a say in how this is going to be successful. So I think Chief Lemon and I think when we say that, we're saying that because we want to move into this with extreme caution to make sure that the system that we're moving into is a right fit, and we're going to have operational success with it. I think with the model that is most likely going to be discussed in this particular one, whether this center sits in the town of Auburn or not, we're comfortable that we will have an equal voice with all of the partners across the board. And that's not how all regional centers are created, right? Not all regional centers are created equal. And there are some where there is sort of that hierarchy authority where the police chief, in this particular community, because that's where it sits, they set the rules for everybody else. And we were not interested in being part of that system. But providing it is established and it's set up correctly from the ground up, I think Chief Lemon, he was not able to make it tonight. He extends his regret for that. But if he was sitting here, he would tell you the same thing, that with the model in which we're looking to establish this with a board, we are comfortable that we would have an equal say.
Thank you.
If I might ask, so this, we're talking about this for fire and police in each of the communities, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And would it be possible there would be a board of directors running this center with members of chiefs from the 5 towns involved?
Yeah, so there's usually 2 different models. There's a model where it's just an operational board, where it's the police chiefs and fire chiefs. We're actually looking at kind of expanding that model where you have an administrative and an operational board. So the administrative board would be the TMs and the TAs, or even maybe some of the CFOs from those communities that are on the administrative side and doing the fiduciary work. And then the police chiefs and the fire chiefs on the operational side. And then there's a rep from each group, so everybody knows kind of what's happening on both sides. That to me, and that to Chief Lemon, that kind of collaboration on a board level, that's what equals the success of a regional center.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving along to 6C. We have the Fire Station Building Committee recommendation. Are there members here? Do you guys want to come up?
Good evening. Mark Imsey, the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. Greg Bowling is the vice chair. We actually wanted to give you a little presentation of what's been going on for the last 6 months that we've been. We have forgot to give you the handouts beforehand, but we have a presentation. So last July, the members were nominated in, and we first started meeting in August, and have been working the last 6 months on refining the building on Prospect Street location for where Chuck's used to be. And we're charged with coming up with the fire station headquarters, fire rescue headquarters, and then getting it to the town meeting in May, and hopefully getting it passed, and then on to the voters and for vote on that. So tonight we're just trying to give you an update on where we stand, what the building looks like. I know a couple of people were at our design charrette 3 weeks ago, but we're still waiting for some of our feedback from our architect and stuff on that. So So we've got, so to start with, we started with the space planning on the site. We'll get into it, but I think we're trying to get to the, having the, we've toured all the fire stations. We toured fire stations locally that have just been built, Northbridge, Millbury, a couple of those, and to get ideas and stuff. And so it was obviously that we needed to get the fire department administration all in one spot, not, split between Drury Square and West Street. So that was part of the stuff, plus enough space, and also giving a better breakdown from contaminated sides, from where the apparatus are and when you're coming back from fires, to getting back to living quarters and stuff. So it's so, and then as the guidelines were going, we're looking at a 50-year building, 75-year hopefully, utilizing a lot of materials that are longevity type stuff, not high maintenance or anything else, and then keeping the footprint on the site so that there was adequate use possibly down the road for something else, and not just spread out and take up the whole site for ourselves. So we went through a whole bunch of different floor plans and stuff, and actually had looked at one point with the having space for a regional dispatch facility in there, but then quickly learned that through Chief Coleman and stuff, that the local towns didn't want it part of any police station or fire station. So that quickly became like 5,000 square feet that we said, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to build it out and just leave it vacant, or are we going to do something with it? So actually, we ended up, that space we took off, but the underneath the first floor space we actually built so that we can, or the intention is to build it so you can put a second floor on it. So then if we get, so the site plan around the corner of Prospect and Washington Street, it's actually an L-shaped building where the apparatus comes out on a Prospect, and the building main headquarters and stuff all faces onto Route 20. I know this is a tough slide to see with the stuff, but the diagram on the left is the ground floor plan showing the apparatus bays. We have 4 full drive-through bays, and then there's a big area with maintenance shops, and there'll actually be a mezzanine above that for storage and stuff. And then the 5th bay is the maintenance bay, where they'll be able to pull in trucks and work on them and maintain them and stuff without having to obstruct any of the actual apparatus bays. It's intentioned that this is a clear span bay building, so there's no columns in it. And then as you work your way down on the page, you're coming into the gear rooms and stuff where there's going to be decontamination. So if they come back from a fire, they take off all their turnout gear, can wash it, dry it, as well as take showers and stuff, and then before they move back into the living spaces. So on the first floor, to the furthest to the left there, is a big training room, which also is going to double as a EOC for the town. Right behind it is a fitness center. And then as you take the main lobby, come over to the next side, there's the administration, fire department administration would be all on the ground floor there, all together there. And then the second floor would be the living quarters, where we have, I think it's 13 bunks, which I think right now we're at 8 or 9, I think, in Drury Square. So, and then the living spaces, and then there's mechanical spaces, and the fire pole down to the ground floor. We have some renderings of the building. We kind of were looking at doing brick. They kind of took a darker color brick, but, and I know we got a lot of feedback in our design charrettes about some of the shapes of the building and stuff. So I'm sure this will be changing, because there's some stuff like the roof is pitching the wrong way for solar and stuff. But the intention was that it was trying to go to like a metal roof. It's like a 50-year roof versus going to a rubber roof or something, which is only a 20-year roof and have to be replaced if you're on a flat. So that's still something we're gonna have to look at. But right now, the architect is out of money in terms of what was allocated for them to get to. So we're at our conceptual budget, conceptual design and stuff. We did bring on Left Field, who is our owner project manager, with some of the funds that were voted from last, that were left over from the purchase and the demolition and stuff, and were voted to be used to help. And they've already been starting to meet with the committees and with the department themselves, where we're actually shaving off some more square footage of the building and working on the efficiencies. The next slide is just the face of the building toward Route 20, with the entrance down toward the further on the left on the page where the car is. And then the next one is looking from the farther end, and that would be the training center, EOC area, and that's the spot that would be built, so they could support a second floor onto it. And then the next slide is just coming from the backside. And I guess I skipped over too fast on the site plan one, but we did leave a significant amount of space for, for flow and stuff, from going back to the idea that obviously there's more that can be put on this lot that we purchased. And we're trying to maximize, the use for any possible future one, make it, usable for the fire department, but then have space for future stuff. So with that, Left Field and Tecton, our architect, has worked on budgets. Joe Sullivan is here from Left Field, and he's going to just quickly run through the budget.
Good evening. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been in front of you, and at that time I did tell you that it would be short-sighted of me until I had a full, clear understanding of the square footage, meeting the program needs for the fire department and looking for the next 50-year building that we were doing. As I moved forward, I created a budget that was around 39 line items, of which I identified all of the soft costs associated with the project, and the soft costs include architectural services, OPM, any of the FF&E testing agencies that we're going to need throughout the process, and any other specialized equipment and services that we're going to do through the process. So I identified what the average cost based on the proximity of the location and the size of the building. So I really honed that in based on my past experience in other locations. As I indicated a few weeks ago, that square footage cost, and I try to tailor it to what other buildings are currently costing throughout the Commonwealth. And over the last several months, and from I wish this was 2017, because we'd be having a different conversation, but it isn't. And what I have noticed over the last 3 to 6 months is costs have actually leveled out, which is phenomenal. I've actually seen a little tail down. I don't think it's going to be significant over the next 28 months when we plan on building this, but I think I haven't seen a large escalation. The tariffs worried me a little bit when all that happened, because I don't know what structural steel and all of the impacts on that might be. So I carried a conservative basis based on where we were conceptually. You are at conceptual drawings, so there's no way around that. We're, having schematic to design development gives you a little bit more material and information about the building that you can put some harder costs associated with it. So I had to go off of mostly square footage costs, which ideally I met with the fire department and their group just to go over, what they had sequenced initially, what their needs were, and some of the requirements for their future considerations of operations. Looking at the building, I saw some efficiencies that we could do. And by doing that, we made up a list of, I want to say there was almost 19 items that the department and our team went through. We gave that to the architect. We had, a week or so for them to review it. None of the tasks or the requests that we did seemed astronomical where it was going to affect costs. In fact, we feel it's going to reduce some of the square footage, which would in turn reduce some of the costs associated with the building. So that being said, we did a takeoff on what I felt the building cost of this size of the building, locality, where it's being constructed, and some of the general contractors that I feel that will be bidding on it. Our current costs right now overall are tailing right around $800 a square foot. That being said, we feel that the construction cost for the building would be around 24 million, almost 25 million, $24,800,000 at today's estimated cost. The overall soft costs associated with that, give or take about $5.1 million, which would encompass a total budget of about $30 million. I'm carrying a 1.2 contingency with that right now because as we move forward, we have geotest borings and test pits going to be happening on the site just to find out more of the, unknown factors of ledge or rock that may be in locations that I just want to make sure that we're covering ourselves. The biggest cost of any building is getting out of the ground and knowing the incidental gradation of soil and soil conditions, whether it's ledge or rock or boulders, is going to help us identify and put costs allocated to those line items. So that being said, I feel confident right now, based on previous projects that have come in recently and what the market is tracking right now, to stand up here and say, I'm comfortable with that number right now. As the committee members had indicated, having a design move forward into that next level would give me a little bit more surety of, I'm speculating and making assumptions on mechanical equipment that they're going to be proposing on, and I'm putting dollar values associated with that right now. As that hones in, I'll have a better understanding of exactly the overall mechanical systems and finishes that they'll be moving forward with. But I have a good understanding of where we're at right now. I'm sure you got some questions, so.
Board members have questions?
Yeah, I just have questions probably for town management. What's the current balance of our stabilization fund, considering that the funding scheme contemplates a $5 million off the top funded through that?
Bring up the Chief Financial Officer.
And at the same time, it also mentions free cash. What's our free cash standing?
So currently, the stabilization has just over $5 million, $5,005,247. The free cash that has not been appropriated is $18.3 million.
I do have a quick question. So we used free cash to purchase the Chuck's property. How much of that has been moved back into free cash?
Well, the difference in, let me just see here. In the last several years, we've added 2.5 million in each year back to the fund balance. And according to our free cash policy, we can spend up to 50% of that. So due to conservative budgeting and, tight spending, we were able to recapture some of those funds that we've spent, and we're going to continue to have that as a goal to replenish as much as we can.
So almost half, right? We've recaptured almost half.
Right, because it was 4.6 million that we spent on the
Thank
on
you.
the property. You're welcome.
If this goes through as the 5 million coming out of the budget, so we're going to have to go out and, depending on the results of the vote, look for 25 million. That's not all going to be taken out in one chunk. Where does the 5 million play into that? Does it come out at the end and we'll know where our costs are and it actually comes in, say we end up borrowing 25 million? Does it come in and say 3 million? Or, and again, I'm being hopeful that we come in under budget, but like where in the process does that money have to get removed from that account?
Right, so we're going to request a cash flow on the construction costs. And I think it may have been mentioned that the 5 million would be used maybe towards some of the soft costs. So that would either come off towards the beginning or, I don't know if is furniture also considered some of the furnishing?
That's
the soft
furniture and
costs?
contingency.
So maybe towards the beginning and maybe towards the end.
So, and then, so as we go out, like, how does that money, if there is any money left over, does that get back into free cash? Or does it have to stick with the project, and like, what is that?
No, I mean, if the 5 million isn't used, then it can be voted back into, back to the town, back into the stabilization. But I guess I would want to just a little bit more on the question again. I'm not really sure.
May I say something? I believe the process is, while the construction is going on, to do short-term borrowing to fund it. And then once the project is complete, then we'll go out to do a bond, a long-term, 20 or 30-year bond.
So there's potential that the $5 million doesn't come from free cash at that point. Again, like if we're projecting 30 million, right, and we're going to go out and do that, if we don't need to borrow them, are we looking to take the 5 million and borrow, 22 million? Is that like the process? I'm just trying to.
Well, the project is estimated approximately 30 million. So we're estimating to borrow 25 million. And we would do the short-term borrowing at the beginning to get us to the point, and then we would go and do the long-term borrowing after. But by only borrowing the 25 million, we're saving close to 1.8 million in interest costs as well.
So to put the question a different way, if we're contemplating initially, we're going to spend 5 million and borrow 25 million. If the project comes in cheaper and we only wind up borrowing, if the project comes in at 28, let's say, are we going to borrow 25 and only spend 3 of the free cash, or are we going to spend the 5 free cash and only borrow the 23? I think is what Mr. Chambers is asking.
Right, sure.
So those are all great questions. So first of all, I've done this successfully on a number of different towns. I've used either stabilization or free cash to try to offset some of the construction costs. The short-term borrowing, and I'll be the one putting the cash flow together, and it's going to indicate, what the costs are from a bid award all the way through closeout. Typically, short-term borrowing will carry you through a certain point. We're going to have to contractually have to agree to borrow X amount of money for whatever that contract value is. So if the bids come in favorable and we're able to build this for $27 million and there's a $3 million savings, that money alone comes right out of the top and it gets allocated out of the budget so that you may not have to utilize all of that $5 million. And that's the question you're asking.
Correct.
The timing of when you would be putting that back or wouldn't be right away, because you would want to get through a majority of the construction and, to her point, have whatever that value is for the long-term borrowing process of it. And then at the end of it, and typically projects take about 4 months to close out, but typically we allow the account to stay open because once the operations happen, they get into a new building, there's certain procedures that they just look at. We carry a slight contingency, but a majority of the money would be able to be returned back to the town, and how they allocate it back will be amongst the town manager and the select board at that point.
And that's why I'm asking, because again, if we use the 5 million from free cash, there's substantial savings in the interest rate. And that's where I'm saying is if that money was allocated and we borrowed less, it could actually be favorable when we go out.
It would be a significant savings, correct?
It's significant. Okay. And that's kind of where I want to get is it's not like we're taking $5 million and it's doing nothing. It's actually buying down the rate or saving us till we get to the final long-term borrowing.
The overall payback, correct.
And again, I'm hopeful. I don't know. No one's predicting the future, but I see this. And, again, personally, 5 million's a lot of money. But for a project that is in dire need, it seems like an easy solution to me. So hopefully the voters feel that way.
And ultimately, it's up to the town how they choose how much they want to borrow versus spend out of the free cash. What we're proposing is that town meeting authorize $5 million of wherever free cash or stabilization, whatever, the finance committee, select board decides, is the right way to go about it. And then you have a borrowing authorization for the public of up to 25. And then as you get to the point where you need to actually borrow it, that's a decision that the town could make.
You're in a great, so just to personally, and I've been doing this for 35 plus years, Not a lot of towns are in your position, I can tell you that categorically. Recently, I've just been involved with a town that put some of the stabilization and free cash towards their project, and they were able to, it's a town hall, but they were able to reduce it, very similar to what you're doing. And that's what the purpose of that money is all about. It's about making sure your infrastructure and your capital are improved and maintained as you move forward. By doing so, the support they got from the town was night and day from going out and borrowing the total amount at that point. They put in a lot of money and invest a lot of money into the town's infrastructure, and they just want to make sure the money's being spent appropriately. And, you know, doing the infrastructure the way you're doing it, it's the most fiscal responsible thing you can do. And I commend the town for the position they're in.
Our financial policy is to spend no more than half. That's not on a project, that's per fiscal year, correct?
No more than half of the newly certified amount.
Correct,
Yeah.
which I think she was saying is 18. So,
Yeah.
but
No, the newly certified amount, that's what we have in total. The newly certified amount is less than that. Yeah.
The other thing is we can vote as a board to override
Right.
50%.
Exactly.
If it makes sense to do that economically, the board, I believe it's in combination with the finance committee, can
Well,
dedicate more of that, however, but we're not
and
talking about that.
we took money from free cash to pay for the land. So certainly that's something we can do to pay for part of the fire station.
So my question to town staff is, when do we have to make the decision on whether we're taking it out of free cash or the stabilization fund?
Well, I think it's part of the cell, getting to town meeting and stuff, is how we're approaching the project and stuff. You know, we've got to, so, you know, as we're trying to, you know, roll this out and present it to everybody in the, you know, town, you know, to the public and get their feedback on it, we'll, you know, it's a method to do, you know, it's an idea. Nothing's set in stone because, you know, we need the town meeting vote and we need then the public vote after that. And then from there, we've had 10 months of design bid before we can go out to, you know, construction and stuff, you know, if it all goes in the right way. So, I mean, we're going to be back here, you know, refining numbers and, you know, honing in on it. So, I mean, it's more of a game plan of, you know, what's in hand right at the moment is maybe a good way to go. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
to push the project forward.
I agree with the strategy. My question is, do we have to vote tonight? Do we have to vote next meeting? Like, when do you need us to vote by to move this forward? I mean, Finance Committee has to vote as well. I assume we're voting first, Finance Committee would be voting second.
It's going to be on the warrant.
So
Well, eventually be on the warrant, but they need us to know one way or the other.
from the committee, the recommendation is this is the financial plan. So whatever the process would be to get a warrant, or the warrant articles drafted appropriately for town meeting. So work backwards from that. But I think, as Mark had alluded to, the earlier that we can socialize this, the better. You know, we've tried to be as transparent as possible in this process, and hopefully a lot of people are watching right now. So, you know, the sooner we can say, hey, this is the direction we're going, the better. Obviously, you know, our position is just a recommendation to the select board and if, you know, to put a plan together with the finance committee, so that we can, you know, sort of have marching orders of like, this is the plan.
And are we looking for a vote on one or the other, or just a blanket vote? It could be coming out of A or B,
Through the
or do we
chair.
have to specify A or B?
No, through the chair, it could be one or the other. Like I would just say either or. One of the other things that's pretty important is when this was first being discussed, the previous town manager was here as well, and we spoke to Unibank. We spoke to our financial advisors. It is key to make sure that none of these types of transactions affect our bond rating. That just counterproductive. Our interest rates would go high. So we did get information from them that it would not negatively affect our bond rating.
through the chair, so you asked the banks for 5 million. You didn't say what's our limit before it affects the bond rating, or how was that ask made?
We asked for the 5 million. If we went to take 5 million from our stabilization or free cash, would that have a negative impact on our bond rating? The answer was no.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could, please.
Certainly.
I just want to mention too about we would have to come up with specific dollars though that are going to come out of how much free cash, how much stabilization. And just to remind everybody that the free cash, certified free cash does expire as of June 30th. And then it will become available again when we certify it, probably in later September.
So do you have a recommendation on free cash or stabilization? I mean, from my standpoint, it makes more sense to take more from free cash, seeing as though there's 18 million there and there's only 5 and change in our stabilization, and that would completely deplete it. But I didn't know if there was a recommendation either coming from the committee or from, the project management or from our town finance.
So typically, free cash is the, probably the best mess, especially in the position financially that you're in.
So I'm going to put this out there, and I don't know if I'll get a second or not, but I'm going to make a motion that we recommend expending up to $5 million from our free cash account to go towards the construction of the Auburn Fire Station building.
Second, and I have some questions. Sure. Okay. So is this what you're presenting to town meeting? These numbers, or are you going to refine them anymore? Or?
So they're going to continue to evolve as I get, my goal right now is based on the discussion that I had with the architect. We're going to be refining the overall square footage. My goal and my ultimate report will hopefully show a reduction in overall costs.
Okay.
So that's my goal. I'm not looking to, it's not to exceed, and I feel very comfortable over that $30 million process.
Okay.
My goal is to reduce that as much as I can.
Okay. And I assume when we go to town meeting, we'll get some papers to support some documents so people could see what the effect would be on the average tax property and maybe on the median too.
There will be lots of that.
Yes,
between
good.
now and the town meeting, yeah.
Finance committee, okay.
Our goal is to have a number of different public forums. The reason why we're looking for your support and recommendation to move forward on this is so that we can provide that documentation well before the town meeting.
Yep, gotcha.
May I ask,
course.
has financial modeling been like for every million that we spend from free cash and don't have to borrow, is there a certain dollar amount that we save, or, and I'm asking, and I don't know what anyone's appetite is, I don't want to put the town in a bad position, but if Unibank was to say the bond rating doesn't get affected if we spend 8 million, will putting 3 million more, again, is there a number that we can say, hey, if we put 3 million up now, we're going to save $500,000 in interest costs or whatever that is?
I mean, I think he said if we put in the 5 million, it saves 1.8 million in interest.
But
So I think the question is, if we put in 8 million, do we
Right.
get even better savings?
it doesn't affect our bond rating.
Correct. And no, and that's critical, but again, we didn't ask that information, but if we know
Right.
financial modeling, and again, I'm one person, I don't know what the appetite is, but to me, again, if we can save another, $800,000 by putting $1 million up, like, that seems silly not to.
That's certainly a question. That's something that we could authorize later too. A year down the road. Because we wouldn't be changing the borrowing, we'd just be borrowing less.
I think the concern is that, and maybe this is not the right way to put this, but we still have to sell this to the voters to get it passed. And part of that sale is the $5 million is going to, upfront is going to save us X amount in borrowing and make it a little more, palatable. And I think to Mr. Chambers' point is, if we put in 8 million, does that make it the sale even easier to do? Right now, we have everybody saying 5 million is the right number. You still have to go to finance committee. So in between now and going to finance committee, you can do due diligence, and if 8 is better, then finance committee can recommend that and always come back to us for another vote to sort of, concur. But to at least get the project, to get it moving, I'm comfortable with the 5 now until we hear a better number.
let's not forget, we have the headquarters that are going to need some form of retrofitting. So let's not run out the door with all the money.
Right.
And we might also be on the hook for, if we vote for this regional
Dispatch. Yep.
9/11 situation. So
And we know we still have demands with library and DPW and school department that are going to be coming as well.
So-
so.
If I may, again, you just said we have to sell this. So if the tax is 215 annually, what does that look like if we use the free? Does that make it, again, more palatable?
Right.
So if you have the numbers, I'd like to see something like that. Yes, we can do it at a future time and we can have millions of discussions. I'm not against using 5 million.
I just think we get the ball rolling with the 5, and you go to finance committee in a week or two, you can probably have a better number if
I
it's,
do want to there is a correction on the slide. The number would be 250 at an average 457 house. The 215 number that was in the older printout there is for a $400,000 valuation, but the average home valuation in Auburn now is 457,110. So it would be about $250 a year impact.
Okay.
on residential.
Thank you. Do we know what that impact is to commercial?
Through the chair, we do have that. The CFO can let you know that. I just want to circle back to this previous conversation. So originally, we had Unibank run a number on the impact from borrowing 30 million, 29, 28, down to 25. We wanted to be conservative with the ask from free cash or stabilization, so that's sort of where we landed on 5 million. But as was discussed, yes, the more money that would be put towards to reduce the borrowing is a direct lowering of the tax impact. So we can, Karen and I can work together in reaching out to Unibank, and we can kind of continue that exploration of borrowing from, now 24 to 20. And at least to provide the board with that information, so you kind of have that information and you can make a decision based on that.
yeah, and I think it would be helpful if you have that in time for the finance committee discussion. I'm not sure when you're meeting with them, but
Yeah, we can have that within the next couple of days.
perfect. Thank you.
So we asked for the impact on the commercial industrial would be 62 cents per thousand, whereas on the residential, it would be 55 cents.
Thank you.
have a number for what an average would be for them.
I do not have an average on a commercial industrial.
Through the chair, if I may, I know we've talked about this in tax classification as well. Can we do it on the median home value? That way we know it affects half of them at that much and half below rather than an average? Because I know there's certain houses that are valued a lot more than a 900 square foot ranch.
Maybe do both, right? Median.
Agreed, and I would like to see that, because I think that's going to tell the story where the impact is, because if we're doing a median value, then we're going to say half the people are going to pay more than that and half are going to pay less.
Okay. So there has been a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah, I appreciate the volunteerism as well. I've watched the meetings. You guys have done an excellent job.
We are on number 7. There are no communications. We do have some select board general items. There is a finance committee vacancy update, and I will turn that to you, Ms. Vecchio.
So yes, we do have, I believe, 3 candidates. I think we got another one later on today. So I'd like to know if the board could vote for the interviews in the next meeting. We did get, just so you know, we did get, a lot of people respond to our additional outreach for not only finance, but for other departments as well.
Through the chair, I see that it says resumes attached. I know board members had asked if we could get more information. Can that be shared? I don't know.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
So we got applications and we did additional outreach to those that didn't give us resumes. We asked for resumes as well. We just did that today.
Okay,
So we could get that before we
Before.
Yes.
vote at the
Cancel
next
meeting.
meeting.
Yes.
Perfect, thank
Thank
you.
you.
appreciate it.
I would make a motion that we schedule the hearings, meetings, interviews, something like that, one of the above or all of the above for our next meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. We have no proclamations or recognitions. There are some gift acceptances. A gift acceptance, sorry.
Make a motion that we accept a gift to the police department gift fund in the amount of $100 from Mildred Cummings with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. We are moving along to 9B, 9 town manager items.
Thank you so much. Through the chair, as you know, the town received formal notification that there was a developer interested in land off Athens Street for a 40B affordable rental project. The developer for this project went right to the state for approval and did not engage the town or any town department in the plan or the project. I did outreach to the state, Michael Busby, who's the relationship manager for planning and programs for Mass Housing, and he told me that he was scheduling a site visit for February 18th at 11 a.m.
Or the 13th?
13th or 18th? The letter says
18th.
13th.
I know. He
Okay,
changed it
so
to
it's
the
18th.
18th.
Okay.
I double-checked the email today because I saw that discrepancy as well. I will follow up with another email with him tomorrow just to make sure. That's for all local board committee members and officials, interested parties to attend. I have done outreach to our department heads, police, fire, school department. We are sending information, the application to Concom and planning so that we can get all of their feedback back to me by February 21st so that we can respond with our concerns regarding the project by the due date of March 3rd. So those are the deadlines that we're working with right now. I don't have any other information except that the 40B training that I went to last week was very informative and I think gave us a few more tools to work with in regards to providing guidance to ZBA and what can be applied to the permitting when they do permits in the ZBA and how important the letters from residents and public safety officials, Concom planning, how important those are when it comes to the permit process.
And I can tell you, Mr. Kazanovich sent it out to all of us. It's February 18th at 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
That is when the site, Mr. Busby had given some sort of,
Letter that they sent.
The letter says
is,
13, yeah.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
I'm telling you that Mr. Kazanovich
Yep. Oh, I understand. I just want to.
sent all of us and set it up before he went on his merry way. So it is the 18th of February at 11 o'clock at Athens Street.
Do board members have any questions?
So are we going to, for February 24th, are we going to get a template of a letter that we can approve to send for that meeting that's going to include all of the comments from all the various department heads regarding this project?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need to schedule that meeting in case more than 2 of us attend? The walkthrough, if so be it.
Because it's not a meeting. It's not a meeting.
It's just
It's just,
We just can't discuss and deliberate at that.
But there will be question and opportunity, so you might not be deliberating, but then there are 3 people and our town council has told us we're not allowed to talk. So just want to.
Yes, but
Just want to verify that
but
we're
with due
following
respect
the
to town council, we've we've been to these types of things before where walkthroughs are fine, we're able to ask questions. We're not allowed to sit together and deliberate and say, I'm going to vote this way. How are you going to vote? I think this is a bad idea. We can ask questions, we can engage, but we cannot deliberate ourselves at that meeting.
Just want to make sure we're protected.
Yeah,
Should
no.
questions be asked?
Excellent question.
Are there any other questions? Please.
Hello again. So for the last site visit, we did actually post for various agendas. So just so it would be on the public forum that the site visit was being held. So we did that. It's not, again, like you don't have to do minutes. It's nothing like that. But it does give the public an understanding that a site visit is being done.
And then again, it's informational. I don't know are the abutters notified, and have we expanded our official notification aspects? I know we talked about abutters of abutters and expanding that range, and I don't remember if it was distance from this development.
So through the chair, it is not our meeting. It's a mass housing meeting, and it's a site visit for them. I think it's important for us to post that this site visit is happening. I'm not sure, I did inquire about abutters, but it's not our meeting, so I'm not sure the best way to do that.
So mass housing, do they have any notification standard that we know that they notify the abutters?
No, I don't believe they do.
Okay, so can I ask, and I know that this is going to be a lift for town staff, but I think the more people informed, the more people that attend that meeting and show concern and voice concern to mass housing, the better. To give them, information and feedback. Is it possible that we can do our regular notification, whatever we do for ZBA, I think it's 300 feet from the address or whatever it is, sort of a radius. That way we at least notify those abutters directly that this meeting is going to take place. So walk across the street and tell mass housing what you think.
To further that, I know we went a little bit wider for the Wallace Ave. Can we, whatever parameters we used for Wallace Ave to notify abutters? Thank you.
Through the chair, is this, to our interim town administrator, is this document public?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
And if we're sending out notifications, can we make sure that we have the email addresses, the phone numbers, the hours of operation of the manager, DDIS personnel, obviously fire, police, DPW, just so that the residents will have it at their fingertips. They don't have to go looking for it.
No problem.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Oh, a request, please. Could we have a copy of the new recap sheet and the free cash certification?
Yes, no problem.
Yep.
Is there any other questions, comments? Okay, so we're moving along. We have no table items. We have number 11.
Madam Chair, do we have to vote to refer this to the DCG?
Oh, yes, sorry. Is there a motion?
A motion that we refer it to the DCG.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Thank you for that. We have number 10, no table items. Number 11, no member items. Is there anyone else signed up for public comment? Seeing none. We do have meeting minutes in our packets. Are there any corrections? Then I will accept them as read. We just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. We are adjourned.